All right. We'll begin tonight in verse 31. We'll just read 31 through 37 of Mark chapter 7. And I don't know which way to be picked on. So we'll go in the middle, go straight back, and then we'll see which side we'll take it. Brother Warren, if we'll start with verse 31, and we'll read through verse 37.
Again, departing from the region of Tyre and Sidon, came through the midst of the region of Decapolis to the Sea of Galilee. Then they brought to him one who was deaf and had an impediment in his speech, and they begged him to put his hand on him.
And he took him aside from the multitude, and he put his fingers in his ears, and he spat and touched his tongue. Then looking up to heaven, he sighed and said to him, that is, heal.
Immediately his ears were opened, and they heard of his tongue was loosed, and he spoke plainly. Then he commanded them that they should tell no one, but the more he commanded them, the more widely they proclaimed him.
And they were astonished beyond measure, saying, he has done all things well, and they spoke the deaf to hear and
All right, kind of a little geography here. This map is going to get beat on tonight. I've used it several times, kind of gets further up. Decapolis is on the other side of the Sea of Galilee. We've seen it before, but not by that name. Okay, remember where the legions of demons were in the men, and they were put down into the swine. They ran down. That is the same area, even though Decapolis is one of the questions. What is that? Okay, Decapolis meaning 10, so it's basically 10 cities. And y'all kind of behind the 8 ball because I got questions, but I know the answers. And y'all don't. I'm sorry, but what's the meaning behind it? It's 10 cities. Okay, so it's 10 cities on the other side of the Sea of Galilee. And question is, it was used here for the region. It wasn't just for one single area of the region. But the question I want to ask is, Jesus' fame been brought into that area before? And if so, at what time? Or was this his first time of going to the other side? Okay. Thinking caps. His fame has gone before him. Okay. We talked about that he went on the other side and there was 2 men. They all had demons. Both of them did. Thousands, legions. One of them spoke to Jesus, and Jesus did what to those demons? Yeah. Into the swine, went down the river. The fame of that fame went out throughout. That's the first time. This, I believe, is the second time that he's coming across there. And if we remember the geography and around, is this a Jewish region, a Gentile region, or we can't tell? Okay. Okay. This is a Gentile. Okay. Jesus has ventured out. You know, the region of Tyre and Sidon up north, it's Gentile. He comes around the Sea of Galilee to this point, Decapolis, it's a Gentile. He'll go across the sea again to back to Galilee for a little bit, then he'll take off and go up to Caesarea Philippi, which is Gentile too. So he does make some trips into Gentile land, but his first priority is with Israel, right? You know, I got to go to the children of Israel first, got to go to the Jews. But he didn't, he understood that the Gentiles be grafted in. So his fame was apparently had gone out before him with this, as far as this goes. So the individual comes. What was his elements that they brought? And who brought them to Jesus? Does that make sense?
Couldn't hear, couldn't speak very well.
Okay, couldn't hear, couldn't speak. We don't know what kind of speech impediment. It could be the stuttering. It could be not able to speak at all, not understanding. And I'm behind myself. These are the 10 cities that make up the region. So who brought this person that's deaf and can't speak real well, if any at all? Who brought that person to Jesus? Yeah, it says they. Okay. Friends, relatives, acquaintances, somebody knew that Jesus could heal, knew that this person needed to be healed physically. So they made the connection. Now, is there an application for that us today? Maybe not necessarily physically, but maybe spiritually. Yeah, I hope so, Tim.
Yeah, only those who need a position or sick
Yep.
need a position, so you gotta know if you're sick and you're said, but you don't, then you never receive that.
Yep, we have lessons that we need to go and make disciples of all nations. You know, and we're getting ahead of ourselves. That's another question on down. So I can remember a person that had friends that went to Jesus, didn't get inside the house. There were so many, and the friends going through the roof. They're talking about being faithful. Again, another set of friends for this individual to come. And what steps did Jesus take to heal this person? I researched part of this and it's like, did you really do that? Scripture says yes.
You took him away from the crowd.
Yeah, for what reason? You speculate. That's what the scholars do. But the Bible doesn't say, it just says, hey, you took him away from the crowd. Put his fingers in his ears. Said whatever that word is, it's Arabic. And be open. But before that, I've skipped verse 33. That's the one that gave me trouble. Anybody want to kind of explain verse 33? Because I found it. It's like, after he put his fingers in his ears, he did. Yeah. Scholar says that, that Jesus spit in the person's mouth. Okay. That's what they're all leaning towards. I don't know. All I know is that he did it, and what happened to the individual. He was healed. He filled the boat. How he did it, we know he put the ears in his fingers in his ears. Did the individual understand what was going on? The spoken word? No, couldn't. Because he couldn't, he was done, but yet I get the sense that this may be the first generation of sign language. Because apparently Jesus had to have some type of communication with this individual. Didn't hear, so apparently he took him by his hands, some type of signs to lead him on, telling him, that type of language, what he was going to do for him. Any thoughts or comments? How long did it take for the miracle to happen? That makes sense and did. Now, it wasn't a few hours, wasn't a few days. Of course, that can once again refute our faith healers and all that, miracle workers today, because they claim the miracles happened, but yet it's not in the way that Jesus does. So it happened right then. And again, what were some of the directions that Jesus gave this individual? Tell no one. Yeah, we've heard that before, haven't we? And we've heard it more in the Gentile lands, that he's traveled more than he did back in Galilee. So he said, don't tell anyone, and what's human nature? Don't tell him. Yeah, and that's what they did. They went and told everybody as far as what he's did. And put yourself in that person's position, wouldn't you? There I was, I was dumb, I couldn't speak, couldn't communicate, and I probably had to have help along the way on a daily basis. And now I can understand, I can talk. It'd be amazing to be like if we were blind. Think about a person being blind and all of a sudden can see for the first time. It'd be amazing. So yeah, that person would be excited and go tell folks. Oh, let's see how far ahead we are. Again, a while ago, not tell anybody that, be speculation. Maybe it's not time for Jesus. He wants his timetable will be time later on. Going down to that fourth Passover, he gets betrayed and killed. That his time at that point was at hand. Okay. So apparently, it could be that his time still wasn't quite ready for what he wants. And then who gave the voice as far as he has done all things well? He went out and said that. They did. So whoever brought this individual witnessed what Jesus did for this person. And I would have to assume that they here knew this person probably pretty well. I don't think it would be a person that just went by and said, "Oh, you need to go see Jesus," just some fans. But they was probably the ones that he knew quite well, and they went out and said he did all things well. What an amazing statement for an amazing individual like Jesus. Thoughts or comments before we go into chapter 8? This is not a one-way monologue class.
We know,
Yes.
from Matthew's account that
Yeah.
it wasn't just that one, that it was a multitude
Yeah.
that were coming to Jesus, and it wasn't just this one gentleman that was
Right.
healed. It was
I'm glad you mentioned that,
many.
because Matthew gives, is that 16? 15, okay. It is here. Matthew fills in. And that's what I like about the harmony of this. Matthew fills in a little bit more than what Mark does. And Trey's right. There's just more than just this one. Okay. Let me get over. So we're looking at what, verse 29, 30, 31, down in that range. So every time Jesus went to a city, he has a multitude of folks most likely either coming to him, phoning with him. We'll see that. When he said 5,000, we'll see it here. When he said 4,000, other places in his ministry, Sermon on the Mount, another large group. So this wasn't the one individual. And as verse 30 says, large crowds came to him, bringing everybody, lame, crippled. So why he picked this one person out, we don't know. It's like he healed as many as came to him. I'm glad you mentioned that. I had in my notes and just slowly look. Y'all can do that. Y'all can stop me and say, "Hey, what about this other thing?" Questions? I know there's some questions and thoughts before we proceed on. Yes, okay.
Why do you think Jesus healed in that way? Which he healed people in other ways. Sometimes he wasn't even with the person; they were somewhere else.
Right.
So seems like there could be something we could learn there by the method of what he was showing or doing or proving.
So is that a question or is that a comment? That's a question. Anybody want to try to tackle that question? I can probably speculate, it probably wouldn't be right. It's putting the fingers in the ears. The ears were what? Useless, basically, for this woman. When Jesus healed the blind, he took sometimes clay on the place that he was going to heal. Did he do that to give direction? Most likely not. I mean, as you say, he could speak, hey, dumb, deaf, whatever your speech impairment, be gone. He was doing that. I don't know if he was just trying to emphasize to the guy, to the gentleman, that he had the power to do it, and this is what he did. Anybody else? Probably not the right answer. We could speculate again. I got 3 hands all of a sudden. We'll go back to the originator of the question. What's your thoughts on it?
Like you mentioned, the one guy that was blind and said, maybe play when you go watch the pool, and that shows faith on his behalf to do that.
Right.
Perhaps it was the faith to allow Jesus to heal us the way he wants us to be healed, whether it's tithes or whatever it is, to whatever he wants us to do, whether it's silly or not, or makes sense for the rest of the world or not, but the faith to do that on his terms.
Okay. That almost brings up the event about Naaman in the Old Testament. You know, he goes get and George that time he didn't want to. Maybe it's late. Now I got Mark, Dave, and Michael, I think. Go ahead, Mark.
Well, I was just going to say that one thing we can know for sure, that Jesus felt it was necessary to do that in the place that he was. And we can speculate the whys and the hows, but we know that this is the way that he chose to do it. And you know, we can pretty much conclude that there was a reason.
Yeah.
We can understand it. Here, Jesus demonstrated to them, to us, that he had the power to do this.
But you got to remember, he took the individual aside, so it wasn't like in front of folks, so it was more one-on-one. And I still lean now towards, you know, faith of the individual. Faith of that individual on Jesus' part to heal. Does that make sense? Dave, did you have your hand up?
Literally, no.
Oh,
There's one thing in common here that with the other miracles that he did. Part of one of the reading was they were all needed.
I agree with that. There's no time lag. He spoke and it was done. Michael, then Keith, then, boy, howdy. Go ahead.
To bring it first, they wanted him, they wanted to do what they did, like they couldn't die, it's not wrong. But we know when it's
You had a lesson today about following his pattern, his personal church, and what he lays down instead of what we want. Keith, did you have your... Okay. You got to follow up on what we're at, or you got to know.
I was just gonna say, what stand up to me is that Jesus didn't do it for show, he never did it. So for the multitude, they want to see something, great and outstanding, it's more personal. And, I think that's a big correlation with my relationship with Jesus through his baptism, through his blood. It's my conscience that I have to make me feel to God. So, clean conscience for the world. It's the healing, in this case, or baptism, it's very personal. It's never for show.
Right. Yeah, Keith, you got another question.
You know, verse 34, it says, the Bible says he sighed. What do you think he sighed with?
Oh, that's a good question, because I was going to ask it on later on in a different situation. So let's just couple it together, because it's another place in tonight's reading, chapter 8, verse 12, he did the same thing. He had a sigh. So the question is, what do you think he had a deep sigh at this point? Again, I don't think scriptures actually come out and say. But yeah, I think we can put two and two together, maybe get close, Keith, and then Michael, and then.
Well, I was just going to say that if you look at what's talking about chapter 8, verse 12, beside there, sometimes you think it's time because like, come on. But I think it's just based on what we know. Jesus came to teach, right? And now you have all these, and I think we see that he talks about his time has not come yet, and there's things that are going to happen, and that when these people hear about him, signs and wonders that he's doing, they all come to him wanting these signs and wonders to be healed. And I think Jesus has compassion on these people, but he understands or realizes that that's not what his work for his Father is. It's
ultimately for his claim to be fulfilled. And I think that may be an indication of why he's sighing, because he understands these people, he has compassion on these people, and realizes that, I've got work to do, and that all these people be coming to this.
Right. Or you may definitely understand that there's just something for that that's not really for, his food and his water and the living food and water. Lost track. Michael, did you have it? Okay. Yeah. I went a little bit different angle. Because when somebody does a deep sigh, then that show the human part, and then this one of the places where you see the humanity of Jesus, because people debate that plus his deity. But here's another place that Jesus was physical. Here he is. Especially 12 with those leaders should have known, and we'll get to that here in a few minutes when you do the deep side. Good comments, thank you. Any more else before we move on to chapter 8? All right. As I said, I'm going to beat this map up. We are still in that area down the south of it, and if we look at the accounts, we find that physical places that Jesus goes up on a mountain high enough where these 4,000 can come to him. Okay. Almost like the Sermon on the Mount. It goes up all the way on the mountain and goes throne to him. So he's still over on that side of the Sea of Galilee, still in the Gentile part. So let's read chapter 8, 1 through, let's go 1 through 9. My author breaks it at 10, but we're going to stop at 9. Wherever we stop at. Okay, Chris?
Another day, the multitude being very great and having nothing to eat, Jesus called his disciples to him and said to them, I have compassion on the multitude because they have now continued with me 3 days and have not eaten.
And if I send them away hungry to their own houses, they will faint on the way, for some of them have come from afar off. And his disciples answered him, how can one satisfy these people with bread here in the wilderness?
Yes, and how many loaves do you have? I said, so the man of the multitude sat down on the ground. He took the 7 loaves and gave thanks, broke them and gave them to his disciples, set before them. They set them before them.
TJ, you want to read 7 and 8 for us? Sure. Hey, Dave, you want to hit 7, 8, and go ahead and read 9. Verses 7, 8, and 9 for us, Dave. So with that, we got the region where it kind of took place. How many days were these folks with? 3 days. Without food. And the question is, if I've worded it right, what does this indicate as an interest in what Jesus was teaching? The people were in 3 days, had no food. What kind of interest level do they have? You had the fact, what about them? They were, very interested because they could have taken off, got some meat to the back. They were interested. Have you ever been interested in something so much that you had skipped a meal or food or whatever? That's what, they were, apparently Jesus was teaching in such a way that these Gentiles, whoever else was with them, was so interesting that they went 3 days without food. So, there's something there that we can apply to ourselves today. Not necessarily going without food, but we spend And that's time in God's word to the point where, hey, I didn't know how late it was. Huh?
Well, we're listening to God speak. I can't imagine what that must be like.
Mm-hmm.
To actually be there and hear Jesus tell things to people that they're hearing for the first time and reason among themselves about the things that they're hearing.
That would have been awesome. That would have been awesome. But yet, how many folks turned away and didn't follow him anymore? How many, when he came in on that Sunday triumphant entry into Jerusalem that last week, left him during the week, but yet they gave him a triumphant entry. Nikki.
It doesn't say they were the full 3 days. There's a really good chance that they probably had a couple days perfectly listening and they were like traveling away from home. So they probably up to this point had been straight out because they stayed longer than they expected. I don't think it's like they hold on to everything so nothing
Verse 2 of chapter 8, my version says, had nothing to eat. Okay. 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 I see where he comes from. Didn't look at it that way. So here's the same dilemma. What recently did they go through in chapter 2 back about the same thing, didn't they not? And there are some comparisons between feeding of the 5,000 and the feeding of the 4,000. I don't want to look at comparisons. I want to look at contrasts. Take the negative side. If we look back in Mark chapter 6, and we contrast this with Mark chapter 8, the differences between the two, go to verse 35 and 36. Okay, look at those two verses. And I keep that finger right there, that page. Then go Mark 8:3. And do we see a contrast between feeding of the 5,000 and this feeding of the 4,000? I think the thought there is in verse 36, how you let them go out and buy food around the surrounding areas. That was the thought process. But over in the feeding of the 4,000, verse 3, Jesus said, if I send them away hungry. But he wasn't saying how you send them away hungry. He said, if I did. So that could be a minor contrast. It's still a contrast. If you look at, again, Mark 6:37. Okay. Find his disciples there saying, hey, we got to spend how much money? And we won't come close to feeding this group. Okay, 200 denarii is, one denarii, my understanding, is a day wages. So 200 would be 200 days wages. And if you assume a 365 days, which they probably don't, back in Hebrew time, that's a lot of money. Okay? The disciples say, hey, if you can make this much money, we find in verse 4 of chapter 8, what do you tell them? What transpired? It didn't say how much money it would take to go feed them. It says, where would anyone be able to get enough food, find enough food? So we're not looking at, well, it's going to take 200 days' wages to go feed this crowd. It's like, hey, we're going to find all this food in the same desolate place. And then the third, if this makes sense, again, Mark 6:38, Jesus asked the question to the group at that point. What was the question? Mark chapter 6:38. Yeah, go look. Okay. Just like my kids, just clean the room. I have to go look. So go look. So how many loaves you got? Go look. Come back to the feeding of the 4,000. Verse 5, how many loaves do you have? What did it say? 7. So they knew. So they knew. So a little bit of contrast. There are definitely some comparisons between the two. Some of the comparisons. What sticks out between these two feedings? Comparison wise, similar. Funny. One, compassion. Two, they were in a place where it would be hard to get food to them. So it wouldn't be like Capernaum or Jerusalem, go out 10 minutes, come back, fed. So, what else? Similarities. Yeah. Yep. Blessed food. He had them to sit down in an orderly fashion. Okay. Feeding 5,000 tells us by hundreds, by 50s. Feeding of 4,000 is in verse 6. So, is he a God of confusion? No, he's a God of order. Even at this point, he was at an orderly fashion how to feed us. Even today, he's a God of order, decent and in order. Okay. So they had the bread. They found some few fishes. He blessed both. No similarity is what after they were fed. Yeah, they were all full, and then they collected a whole bunch of academic. I'm going off a tangent. So, put yourselves in those disciples' place. Put yourselves if you can in their shoes. They've seen the feeding of the 5,000 with 5 loaves and 2 fishes, and they've seen how much food was gathered back. What do you think their faith should have been like at this point in the same situation? Less people. Should have been a no-brainer to them, but yet they didn't have that faith, did it? Still didn't have the faith. And we'll find that later on in this reading if we get to it. It'll come up. So they gather it. They had 5,000. They sent them away. Any questions at that point before we continue on? Make sure I have that. There's a map. We kind of have a breaking event. So don't ask me why. Verses 10, 11, and 12, 13. Mark wrote them in this place to break it up. He did through the Holy Spirit's guidance, and we have to glean why. Believe that researched it right. I think this is the only place in the Gospels that has this. Take that back. Matthew has it as well. Later on in the chapter, there's a place in it that only Mark records, but Matthew records this one as well. We find, where do we stop reading? Was it Dave, Tina? We're on the read 10, 11, 12, 13. Let's take a couple of verses and we'll pass it on. Okay, not a problem. Not a problem. Mark chapter 8, verses 10 and 11.
Immediately going to the board with his disciples who came through the Pharisees came out to introduce Jesus, and he grabbed him with signs and heavily tested him. He tried to use his spirit and said, why did the translation take time? Surely I say to you, no time from giving to the left time, every time.
And Matthew 16 has this same event. Again, fills in a little bit more than what Mark has. And you've got to understand the writers go to a specific group. Okay, that's why some gospel account writers have more information than others. Scale to the group. So here we are going back across the Sea of Galilee, so they're going to be on the Galilean side at this point. And we had some folks coming and talking with him. Who were those? Pharisees. Matthew indicates some Sadducees was in there as well. So they were coming out and arguing, I guess, would be the way Mark would have it going in verse 11, that they were arguing with him. They were trying to do what with Jesus? Or to Jesus? Yeah, Christmas passing. You got to remember, we're already past the third Passover on the timeline. So he's got less than a year, and he'll know what happens at the fourth Passover, according to Mark. He's going to be crucified. So they're starting to test him more, trying to trip him up. Of course, they should have known this is God, Son of God. There's no way to trip him up or test him or what have you. And that may be one of the reasons why he does that deep side here. It's like, who are the group of the Pharisees? Or what should they be? What should the religious group of Pharisees should have been? Does that make sense?
They should have been experts in the law of Moses.
Yeah, they should have known from the day one or the night when Jesus was born what was going to happen. Did they? No, they were so far off. They didn't even realize. So here they come, starting to argue with him. And what did they ask? They asked for a sign from heaven. Here they are, asking a sign from heaven to the Son of God that has done what in his ministry? I mean, just miracle. Any of them. As we mentioned now, the miracle of being in one place and having somebody healed 20, 30 miles down the road, just on faith. Having the faith of a centurion, a Gentile, Roman. Oh, right. But yet having the faith of that person to have that healing. The touching of the God. I mean, and they're asking, sign? Oh, give us a break. What two things did he say? Probably one, hopefully it's obvious. Here's Pharisees. Here they come asking for a sign from heaven. And it's like, don't you guys go. So I'm jumping down to verse 18. Having eyes and do not see, having ears and do not hear, don't you understand? Here we go. I just see Jesus doing that. What does Matthew say at this point? He did give him a sign. Matthew writes that. What would that sign been? Yeah, sign of John. If you want to sign, here's sign of John. Okay. They'll figure that one out. They couldn't because they didn't understand. Hey, destroy the temple. Well, this temple took, 46 years to build? No, they didn't understand it. This temple, his body. So they gave him a sign, and I think Matthew calls them the perverse generation again. I mean, he really tears up these Pharisees in this last year. Go to Matthew 23 and just starts really hammering at it. So they leave. They embark and they go again across the other part of the Sea of Galilee. Okay, what was the true sign they failed to recognize? We kind of answered that. True sign would be Jesus himself, right? Looking for signs from heaven, it's Jesus himself right there. They, as Pharisees, didn't recognize, as it was mentioned, they should have been expert teachers. They believed in, believed in resurrection, therefore an afterlife, angels, things of that nature, but yet they were so off. And it could be because of those traditions that they had brought up through the centuries. Okay, remember that lesson? A few lessons back. So we got them going back up to the northern part of the Sea of Galilee. And we're not going to have time. We got 2 minutes. So let's see if I can Look at my notes and see if we missed anything. You guys got any comments, questions? What we're going to get into in 14, at least in 14 through 21, we find the disciples asking among themselves, hey, we gone on a trip here and we only got one loaf of bread. Jesus mentioned something about the leaven of the Pharisees and the Herod, and they're like, how did he know? You know, their conversation is, leaven, that's the bread. You know, they're looking at physics. Did Jesus know the hearts of his disciples at that point? And that's not, he knows the hearts of anybody at whatever point. And he goes and asks him that question, and we'll get into that. Why do you, verse 17, why do you discuss the fact that you have no bread? Do you not yet see and understand? Do you not have a hardened heart? In other words, you've seen all these miracles about feeding the 5,000, 4,000, and yet you understand? That's where we're going to end this evening and start next week with verse 14. Thank you for your comments. Huh?
Who was before we have the invitation night? Let's turn to 207. 207. Hark the gentle voice of Jesus, and there be a glory.
Sweet his cry of love and pity, oh, burn and listen, say and be. Ye that labor and are heavy laden, upon your dear Lord's breast. Ye that labor and are heavy laden, come and I will give you rest. Take his yoke, for he is meek and lowly, bear his burden to him firm. He who calleth is the Master holy, he will teach if you will learn. Ye that labor and are heavy laden, upon your dear Lord's breast. Ye that labor and are heavy laden, come and I will give you rest. In his loving tender voice obey, bear his yoke, his burdens take. Find the yoke his hand is on you laying, light and easy for his sake. Ye that labor and are heavy laden, upon your dear Lord's breast. Ye that labor and are heavy laden, come and I will give you rest.
Lord, take Mark Psalm verse number 255. Psalm 2.
Keep your songbooks close, but Bible's closer. Had a couple of thoughts I wanted to share before we close things out for the evening. So at work, I think most people know that I am involved in the computer systems that run our factory floor, and so we've got a pretty elaborate one that's supposed to keep track of all of our inventory. All the raw parts that we purchase from vendors, all of the different sub-assemblies, all the finished products, everything from start to finish. So, in general, you would think that, a computer can do, some basic addition and subtraction. The catch is that system is given human inputs, though. And then, we can all attest that humans are imperfect. So you get a lot of odd inputs into that system when you look at it over the long run. People will, like the material handler, he might scan a certain pallet 2 times, so he receives in twice as much inventory as he should have. Or they might overlook something on a skid and they never scan that one. Different things like that. So that kind of stuff you can think through pretty easily. What you might not realize at first glance is that the computer system isn't perfect either. Namely, like if we have a power outage, as an example, the system is going to forget everything that was happening at the point of that power outage. So anything that wasn't saved, it's like it never happened. All of that information is gone. So we have this process called cycle counting that we use to keep the inventory straight. So every certain number of months, we'll go in a factory and we'll stop production for the day. Which in a factory, that's a pretty big deal, right? Because that's what it's there for, is to produce stuff. So we stop production, and we have all the people at that factory. Their sole focus for that day is just to count the things that we have in inventory. That's everything that's on the shop floor, or it's in warehouses, or it's on one of the trucks in transit. Everything that we have in our possession gets counted, and we take all that information and then we feed it back into the computer system. So in a sense, we are reconciling the numbers that we have in the PC versus the numbers that we actually found on the shop floor. Most of the time, they match up. Some of the time, though, they don't. So we do this. We do this often enough. Put it that way. We do it often enough that we can catch small problems before they become big problems. So this way, the information that we see in the inventory system stays. We can be confident that it's reasonably close to the actual reality on the shop floor. So the Bible doesn't talk about cycle counting specifically, but the idea of a personal evaluation is a pretty frequent subject in the New Testament. Consider, if you would, Matthew 7:5. You don't have to turn there, but the idea that to paraphrase that, remove the plank from your own eye so you can see clearly, and remove your brother's speck from his eye. So just logically, when we talk about that, we tend to focus on the fact that yes, you are supposed to help your brother and stuff like that. But kind of what's implied is that you need to examine yourself and deal with your own plank first. Deal with that own plank first. Similarly, Revelation, 3rd chapter. You can go ahead and turn there. We'll read a few verses. So again, Revelation 3, verses 1 through 3, the message to Sardis. The angel of the church in Sardis writes, "He who has 7 spirits of God and 7 stars, I say this, I know your deeds, that you have a name, that you are alive, but you are dead. Wake up and strengthen the things that remain, which were about to die, for I have not found your deeds completed in the sight of my God. So remember what you have received and heard, and keep it, and repent." If you caught that in the 3rd verse, remember what you have received and heard, and keep it. So he's not telling them anything new. He's telling them, evaluate against these things that you already had and see how you stack up. And in Sardis's case, the message is that you're currently not stacking up, and you need to make an adjustment. If you think about what we've been hearing in the last few weeks, the response to the bulletins and radio program and a few other places has been pretty positive. As we're working through the 2 big articles that we put out, things that people think are in the Bible and are not, and then also things that people might be surprised to find in the Bible. And the dynamic there is pretty similar. We put that information out there, and we've gotten a pretty significant response to it. A lot of people are frankly surprised at the claims we made, and then the fact that we were able to back them up. Why are they surprised? It's kind of the same idea as the cycle count, right? These are grown adults. They somehow started to believe certain things, but then they never validated it. And what they're finding is that, at least in some cases, the Bible doesn't support those things that they thought were in there. This is all squarely within the realm of what Paul discussed back in 2 Corinthians. So turn, if you would, 2 Corinthians, 13th chapter. 2 Corinthians 13. I'm going to read verses 5 through 10. Test yourselves, see if you are in the faith. Examine yourselves, or do you not recognize this about yourselves, that Jesus Christ is in you, unless indeed you fail the test. But I trust that you will realize that we ourselves do not fail the test. Now we pray to God that you do no wrong, not that we ourselves may appear approved, but that you may do what is right, even though we may appear unapproved. For we can do nothing against the truth, but only for the truth. For we rejoice when we ourselves are weak, that you are strong. For this we also pray for, that you be made complete. Verse 10. For this reason I am writing these things while absent, so that when present I do not need to use severity, in accordance with the authority which the Lord gave me for building up and for tearing down. So notice verse 10 in there. His basic point is it's that he's writing this letter now. He's addressing these things when it's a small problem. So when he comes out and he's there in person, it's not a bigger issue that he has to deal with more severely. If I'm at work and we decided we're not going to cycle counting. We want to keep the factory floor running full time or something like that. We just said we're not going to reconcile inventory anymore. Then logically, the inventory counts in the computer system would become less accurate over time. Those errors would start to build up and build up and build up. And, we would get to a point where the system says we should be able to build certain things that we don't have the parts for. We physically couldn't do it. That's a problem, but we could fix that with a checkbook, right? We could order, things that we know are missing and, kind of push our way through it. Spiritually, though, if we don't take evaluation for ourselves, if we're not, taking, time periodically to check ourselves against the standards that we have, then we might be surprised to find ourselves instead being rejected. Take a quick look. Know your passage for us all. Matthew 7, 21 through 23. Again, Matthew 7, 21 through 23. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father who is in heaven will enter. Many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, and in your name cast out demons, and in your name perform many miracles? I will declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you who practice lawlessness. I don't want that to be you, friends. James 5:9 says that the judge is right at the door. I think we can agree this is a time for action and not for complacency. So I leave this as a challenge for you and also for myself. If you've been, put it this way, have you been making assumptions about what you think is contained within the Word, or how you think you should be living your life? Can you validate those things? That's something that each of us needs to take the time to do. Likewise, if you currently are a Christian, how long has it been since you evaluated your own behavior? Do you recall that you are living correctly, or have you demonstrated and have you convinced yourself that you are indeed living correctly? If you find yourself lacking in any of these things, or even have questions about that, I would encourage you to take this opportunity to come forward while we stand and while we sing.
I am resolved no longer to linger, nor by the world be loved. Things that are higher, things that are nobler, these have allured my sight. I will hasten to it, hasten so glad and free. Jesus, greatest, highest, I will come to thee. I am resolved to go to the Savior, leaving my sin and strife. He is the true one, He is the just one, He hath the words of life. I hasten to Him, hasten so glad and free. Jesus, greatest, highest, I will come to Thee. I am resolved to enter the kingdom, leaving the past of sin. Friends may oppose me, foes may beset me, still will I enter in. I will hasten to Him, hasten so glad and free. Jesus, greatest, highest, I will come to Thee. I'd like to thank Dan for a good invitation, also for reminding me why I got out of the county. Just a terrible thing. Before we're dismissed, Chuck, Tim, any announcements?
So we did send out the email about Amy in her car accident today. Janet's home sick.
Carrie's working. They going that down? Good. Of course, we want to continue to remember the meeting that's coming up in September. To make divisions to good for that support. There's nothing else, Dave. I believe you're down to this closing prayer. Thank you. The friends that we have coming together to say we know what we know and many times to strengthen to all of the everyone and we're so thankful for the word that probably everything that we need to know. And to prepare ourselves to share the word with the community. We pray that we continue to do those tools, we continue to reach out to the teaching the tools. We're not coming to that way. We're good influence to them, and we're example to them, we're not living to them. We pray that we do the kind of death and we help to do it. We hope to find that we will put a good work and you see what good is in God. Do the best we can to run in and do the things for them. And we will pray for not be able to do it in the community. This is the only one that can not about it and to do this place. We pray for you to be close to reading them and to look for the things you put on the
Yeah, because